gone. Fella stopped me on the street last night, said everything's alright. Roller coaster, make it through the day, I'm right. It seems your meal ticket is gone, but life goes on. I could never imagine something better. Yeah, right. Now you're cooking on high heat in the middle of the street. Roller coaster, take me to a better time. Let's go. All sing your high line with the roller coaster of life. Yeah. It's time to all choose your timeline on the roller coaster of life.
Hey guys, this is an experiment. Today is my day off. It's Wednesday, and it's a really nice day in London and kind of the surrounding area. And I think you're a little tilted. What if we do this? I think that should be a little better. So I thought I'd bring you with me on my little day off adventure. And my last day off, that was really nice. I went to Brighton for the first time. I went by myself. And I wanted to do that again. Find somewhere new to go. So I took the train to Kent, which is on the coast, and I'm doing a coastal walk out here. I was actually supposed to go to Broadstairs and walk to Margate, but the Broadstairs stop was cancelled. So I instead went all the way to Ramsgate, and I'm gonna walk to Margate, which is about a 3-hour walk, but it's supposed to be really beautiful. It's along the coast. I've already done part of it. I walked from Ramsgate to Broadstairs, which was my original stop. I got a matcha. I walked around a little bit. I got some wax melts. They're Tuscan vine leaves wax melts because one of my favorite scents in the world is tomato leaves or tomato vines, and I've been looking for a way to make myself and my home and everything smell like that. So I got those, and I thought I would just take you along on my day. I also wanted to film a reading wrap-up for the months of February and March because we are now well into April, and I haven't done that. And I think my plan is to find a few places to stop along the way and hope that the mic of these headphones works and that it's not too windy. But this place is incredibly beautiful, and now I'm like, I should move here. But I think that about every place I visit when it's nice out. So I have to remind myself that I want to move somewhere where I'm also happy to be when it's not sunny. I've never filmed in public like this before, and it's a little nerve-wracking. It's not super public, like there aren't a ton of people around me, but I still feel embarrassed to be doing it. I'll show you my surroundings right now. So I wanted to give you a little reading wrap-up of the last few months. In February and March, I finished 11 books. No 1 stars, which is great. And I read my favorite book of the year so far. I think it's going to be a new favorite. Like, I will reread it over and over again, think about it all the time, which is exciting because I don't know if I've found one of those for a while. I think for this wrap-up, I'm going to do it from my least favorite to favorite books of the month, so I can save that book that I was telling you about that's a new favorite for last. Sorry, I'm holding this because I usually have my computer that I can look up the books that I've read, but I don't have that today. I just have this piece of paper that I wrote on the train, all of the titles that I've read this year and their star ratings. Yeah. I'll go more into detail about the books that I don't have any other videos about. There are a few on this list that I vlogged or talked about more in depth, like talked about my feelings more in depth and why I gave them the ratings I did. So I will go less into depth about those. My least favorite read of the last 2 months, and also happened to be my first read, and that was My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh, and I gave it 2 stars. This is a book that I've heard a lot about, but I've never understood what it's about, and now that I've read it, I understand why. I feel like it's often recommended along the likes of A Certain Hunger and, what is that book? Lovers and Writers. I haven't read that one, but basically just these sad girl litfic books. Basically, this book is about a girl whose name I forget, and she's had a very hard year, and she's basically hoping to sleep off this really deep depression that she's been in. And her entire goal is to find a way to medicate herself enough to sleep for an entire year. And after this year is up, she thinks she'll be renewed. She thinks that she'll kind of be reborn. The book started very, very slowly. It's so repetitive. It's just about this girl who is insufferable. She's one of the least likable main characters I've ever read about. I would hope that anyone reading this book understands that the main character is not a good person. She's actually a terrible person. But it's also done in such a way where her racism and weird internalized misogyny and hatred of other women and elitism is never really checked. And it felt genuinely racist at some points. You are so deeply ingrained inside this person's head that you start to feel her emotions, which is a sign of really good writing, but it's also definitely hard to read if you're coming from a place of having experienced anything similar. The last 5 or so pages I really loved, and I thought about over and over and over again. And the way Ottessa Moshfegh writes about the desire to not have any sort of responsibility or to just kind of step off the plane of the world and let it keep going without you, I felt was very relatable and just written really well. It definitely can be worth reading, but know that you're mentally prepared for the journey that this person goes on because it's uncomfortable. She talks about assault and depression and death, and also she's kind of a terrible person, and if you don't want to be in the head of someone awful, I wouldn't recommend reading this. But I'm glad that I did. I originally gave it 2 stars, but the fact that I've been thinking about it as much as I have makes me want to retrospectively give it 3 stars, but I'm not sure how I feel about changing my ratings. So I think if I reread it, I will update it, but I won't change my rating after the initial read. Hi, pups. Who do you belong to? There are also so many good dogs on this walk. Just incredible dog watching. The next book I also rated 2 stars, and that was The Rainfall Market by Yeong-Gwang. And I talked about this in my London to California reading vlog, and so I gave a little bit more information on why I gave it that rating. But basically, I didn't feel connected to any of the characters, and it felt almost like a children's book where the message is hammered home so hard that it loses all of its meaning, which is totally fine if that's the audience, but this wasn't marketed as a children's book, so I wanted more depth from it. Yeah, it was cute. There were parts that I enjoyed reading the descriptions, and I thought it was a very interesting idea, but I was just disappointed with the story that came from it. I'll talk about the next 3 books together because they're actually all part of the same series. They're all part of the Circle of Magic series by Tamora Pierce, and I read Triss's book, which is number 2, Daja's book, which is number 3, and Briar's book, which is number 4. And I gave them all 3 stars. So these books are all part of the Circle of Magic series by Tamora Pierce. And these are a middle grade, maybe young adult, but I think it leans more middle grade book series. I have a habit of rereading books from my childhood when I'm struggling. I think that's something a lot of people do. It's like having comfort shows. These are my comfort books. And those are books like, the Georgia Nicholson series and anything by Carl Hyacin. So Flush, Hoot, all those books. Avalon High by Meg Cabot. Dial L for Loser. The Harry Potter books, of course. And the Aragon series. All of those. And another one of my comfort books from when I was younger was Sandry's book, which is the first one. And I just had never listened to any of the other ones. I don't even know if I registered that it was a series, but I was having a little bit of a hard time after finishing my master's and then not knowing what I was doing and moving to London and having a hard time getting a job. The world is fucked right now. And I wanted to have some sort of comfort, but I didn't want to listen to the same books over and over. So I borrowed the rest of the Circle of Magic series from my library. And over the course of a few weeks, listened to all of them. It was a really easy listen. I love the audiobooks because it's a full cast audio. My only complaint is that one of the kids' narrators definitely changed from the first book. I don't know if it's Briar or Sandry, but one of their narrators is different. And since I listened to Sandry's books so much growing up, it's really jarring. Even listening to 3 books in a row of this new narrator, I can't get the original out of my head. So I gave them all 3 stars, and that's not a bad rating to me. They were exactly what I needed at the time. They built on the connection the kids had. They did some world building. They built on the magic. And I enjoyed getting a new perspective in each book, or a new focus. So each of the kids is the focus of one of the books, but the book series as a whole is really about them all together and how their magic combines and how they work together. And it was just comforting. It was comforting to listen to. It was entertaining. I listened when I was running a lot of the time, and it kept me entertained enough to not think about running too much, which is my goal when I'm running. And I really enjoyed revisiting these characters in new stories so many years later. I think I didn't give them a higher rating simply because it's not my genre, really. I'm not the intended audience. I think they're really good books to read as a kid. I also appreciated that, books, Harry Potter, for example, where they only ever mention the race of the non-white characters. In these books, they mention the race of everybody. They talk about everyone's skin color and their heritage, and I just found it refreshing that it's not just the characters of color that are getting this treatment. So that was Triss's book, Daja's book, and Briar's book by Tamora Pierce. I'm trying to decide if I want to move on to the next place and find a new place to film, or film a few more books here. It's just after 3 o'clock, and my train from Margate is at, I think, 7:45. So I have a few hours, and the walk from here to there should only be about 2 hours. But I do want to stop, lay on the beach, read my book, maybe get in the water. Okay, I think I'm going to do the other 2 3-star books and then save the 4 and 5-star books for my next spot. The next 3-star book I read is a poetry collection by Franny Choi, and it's called Floating, Brilliant, Gone. And it was really disappointing to me because a few months ago I read The World Keeps Ending and the World Goes On, or I think it was The World Keeps Ending and the World Goes On by the same author, and it became one of my favorite poetry collections. It really gripped me in a way that I don't think a poetry collection has since Mary Oliver. So when I read Floating, Brilliant, Gone, I was a little disappointed that I just didn't feel that connection that I felt with her previous book that I read. And the poetry continues to be really well constructed and deep and meaningful. I just think it didn't connect with me the same way, and that's no criticism of the author or her work. Just I rate books in terms of enjoyment mostly, and I just didn't enjoy it as much. People are walking by. The final 3-star book I read in February and March was the latest Emily Wilde book, Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales by Heather Fawcett. And again, a 3-star isn't a bad rating. It means that I enjoyed it enough and I don't regret reading it, but it didn't blow me out of the water, and that's exactly how I felt about this installment in the Emily Wilde series. It's funny because Kayla from Books and Lala, she was talking about this new installment, and she was talking about how she feels that in a similar way to the Veronica Speedwell series. There's a really happy dog chasing some seagulls that are less happy that the dog is there, but it's okay. Now he's in the water. Oh, and now he's all wet. Similar to the Veronica Speedwell series, Kayla was saying that she can't imagine that many people want to continue reading it if they aren't really invested in the relationship. So in the Emily Wilde series, it's Emily and what's his face? You can tell that I'm not invested. Oh. This is going to drive me crazy, but I just can't look it up right now. So Emily and the main love interest, and actually that's the least interesting parts of them to me. And I think I enjoyed this book less because it's such a big focus. I also just found myself getting a little lost, maybe because I wasn't as invested, so I wasn't paying as much attention as I should have been, and not caring enough to go back and figure it out. What is his name? Louie? Dewey? Weasel? This is going to drive me nuts. Hold on. Update. I don't actually have service where I am, so I can't look it up even if I wanted to. But anyway, since I'm not as invested in the relationship, and a lot of this book revolves around their relationship, I was less interested. Also, it spends a lot of its time in one world, in the main guy's world. Oh God, what is his name? Lewis. Huey. Fawcett. I have to not focus on this. Basically, it spent a lot of time in the origin fairy world of the main male character, and I really enjoyed going into the different worlds. So I just was less invested in this. I'll read the next one probably, but if I don't become more invested, I probably won't continue after that. It's the same with Veronica Speedwell. I'm actually not super interested in Veronica and fucking, what's his name? See, now I can't remember any of the main male characters' names in any book ever. Basically, I'm not as invested in the main romance in the Veronica Speedwell series either, but those plots have kept me interested. Emily and... I don't know. Yeah, so those were all my 2 and 3 star reads of the last 2 months, and I'll tell you about my 4 and 5 star reads the next spot. Okay, I've made it to the end of my very long walk. I ended up walking 10-ish miles, and now I'm in Margate on the beach, and you are attached to a lifeguard stand, and I genuinely fear that you might see me get pooped on by a seagull live. So here's to hoping that doesn't happen. I have no clue what the lighting situation is here. It feels like it might be too bright, but honestly, I really want to get a pint, some food, and a book for the book club that I just joined in London before it's time for me to get the train back. So this is what we're gonna deal with. The book that we're reading for the book club, by the way, is Bel Canto by Anne Patchett. And yeah, it's just like a friend's book club, and I'm excited. So I had 4 books this reading session that were above 3 stars, and I'll just continue from lowest to highest. So the first one is Savor by Tarah DeWitt, and I gave that one a high 3-star, like a 3.75. So on Goodreads, I just put it as a 4-star. I read this for my reading sometime. What time is it? Oh, it's 6:30. Interesting. Anyway, I read that for my Reading Booktuber's first 5 stars of the year vlog, and that was for Riley Marie. So this is a romance. It's about Sage and Fisher. Look at me remembering main male characters' names. It's kind of a small town romance. He moves from New York City to her small town with his niece and kind of tries to rebuild his career while reconnecting with his niece. And then, of course, him and Sage fall in love. There are lots of cute animals about. There's a 3-legged cat named Legolas, but it goes by Legs. And I have a soft spot for anything with the nickname Legs because I grew up with the nickname Leggy, and now a lot of people call me Legs. Funnily enough, actually, on my walk, I was listening to Faithbreaker, I think, the 3rd in the Godkiller trilogy, and in that book, the horse is named Legs. So that's what I did on my walk. I listened to about half of that, actually. I'm like 50% in, but that's not what this is about. Anyway, back to Savor It. It was a sweet romance with good communication. I really enjoyed the relationships outside of the romantic relationship as well, and I didn't hate the sex scenes. So that's big for me. I'm looking forward to Tarah DeWitt's next book, which is actually following 2 side characters from Savor. I already have a notification for when that arrives at my library. It's the sort of thing... That's a fly. It's the sort of thing... Just went on such a peaceful walk, and now there's an emergency happening. Rude. It's the sort of thing where I'm really excited to get it from my library, but I probably wouldn't spend money on it. So that was Savor. I'm not usually drawn to contemporary romance, so the fact that this is a romance that I really enjoyed, I would recommend, and I will continue to read from the author of, is big, and it's exciting. The next book I read was for that same vlog. This time it was for Jan Agaton, and I read The Gathering by C.J. Tudor. I gave The Gathering 4 stars. It was kind of a new twist on a vampire story, where the vampires are a long-established creature and they're known in the world. It touched on land rights, it touched on community and fear of the outsider and of the unknown, and also on mob mentality and what it means to belong to a land, what it means to have the right to an area, which I thought was relevant. I really enjoyed it. It's touted as a thriller, but I would call it more of like a... Oh, there's a dog. Hi, buddy. Oh, hi. I don't know who you belong to. Okay, he's not interested in me. He's interested in smelling what's ever on the sand, and honestly, fair. What was I saying? Yeah. So it's not really a thriller. I would classify it more as like a slow mystery drama. There was just kind of a creeping sense of unease and dissatisfaction throughout, rather than fear, because you knew that you weren't getting the whole truth from anyone. I was surprised by the reveals at the end. There were a few that I guessed, but the big ones surprised me. And overall, it was just a good time. I was intrigued, and I've now read 2 books by C.J. Tudor that I gave 4 stars to, so I'll definitely continue to pick up their work. The next book that I gave above a 3-star was Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. That was one of the earlier books I read in the last 2 months, and I read that in the same vlog as the Rainfall Market, so my London to San Francisco, California vlog. I really enjoyed that. It was similar to The Gathering in the way that it was a witchy book, but not in the way that you'd expect. Similar to how The Gathering was a vampire book, but not in the way that you'd expect. Witchcraft for Wayward Girls is about this home for unwed mothers. It is mostly full of teenagers from the ages of like 13 to 19. It's based on true events, not obviously the witchcraft part, but these homes did exist. It's basically about these girls being put in the shoes of adults. You know, they're going to become mothers, and that's a really adult thing to do, but they're still obviously children and they're being treated as such. And they find a book that helps them take back their power and just kind of learn what power means. Witchcraft for Wayward Girls definitely leaned more on the horror side, but much like Grady Hendrix' other books, it was satirical horror and it was pretty light. This is, I'd say, the lightest horror-wise that I've read of him. Besides this, I've read Horror Store and the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I feel like there might be one more that I read, but maybe not. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I will continue to pick up his books and to read his backlist. I think I would like to read My Best Friend's Exorcism next. I think that's next on the docket. So finally, my favorite book of the month, my favorite book of the entire year so far, and the only 5-star that I had in the last 2 months was Água Viva by Clarice Lispector. That book spoke to my soul in a way that a book hasn't in a really long time. It wasn't the story necessarily, because it doesn't have much of a story. It really is just the narrator writing a letter to someone who she used to love, or maybe still does love, or maybe she's writing it to herself. We're not really sure. Lispector writes in a very poetic way, where a lot of it is in metaphor, and in the foreword, the person who wrote the foreword talks about how, even in the language it was written in originally, Portuguese, her words all have double meanings, triple meanings, quadruple meanings. And he said that it might be more difficult to understand it as a native Portuguese speaker than as someone who learned to speak Portuguese because of how convoluted her sentences are. I honestly don't know what to say about this book. I vlogged reading it kind of unintentionally, and I don't know whether I'm going to put that out first or this one. But I talk more about the quotes and my immediate feelings on finishing it in that vlog, because right when I finished it, I filmed a clip. She touches so much on truth and what it is to live in the moment, and it's very self-aware. Her narrator is self-aware, and it's a very meta book because the narrator is writing about words and about communication and how words simply aren't enough to communicate, because we're trying to organize feelings that are ineffable into a finite, invented system through language. And language is incredible and really beautiful, but it simply doesn't have all the tools to express how we really feel. But yeah, that was my favorite book of the month, and my favorite book that I've read in a long time. I'm currently reading something Wild Heart. Let's see. Near to the Wild Heart by her as well, because I did not get enough of her writing. So yeah, thanks for joining me on this little walking adventure, my trip to the beach. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you felt some of the beauty and some of the warmth and the joy of the UK in springtime through the screen, because it's bringing me a lot of joy. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.